Welcome to Yellow Table Talk, a podcast for women professionals interested in climate change. No climate experience necessary. My name is Michelle Lee, and I'm the co-founder of Women and Climate. My background is in software sales, and I've worked for some of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley and pivoted into climate work in 2021. Together with my co-founder, Stephanie Corbally, we have created one of the largest virtual and in-person communities for women interested in climate change, with over 7,000 members in our Slack channel and active members across Asia, Middle East, North America, South America, Africa, and Europe. I want to personally welcome you to the first episode of Yellow Table Talk, the podcast bringing you fresh, essential conversations about climate and women's empowerment. In Season 1, you'll meet women from our global community, learn about various climate topics, and gain leadership skills and essential knowledge to navigate and thrive in your career. This is a space for learning, upskilling, real talk, and meaningful momentum towards empowerment and change. You can find me at @CleverMimiLee on Instagram, and you can follow podcast updates at @women_and_climate on Instagram or on the Women in Climate website, www.womenandclimate.co. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. Today, I am here with Clarissa Tam, who is a Women in Climate City Lead based in Hong Kong. Welcome to YTT, Clarissa.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Michelle.
So, we like to open with what beverage we're having at the yellow table. So, Clarissa, what are you enjoying today?
I am having a lemongrass tea made from lemongrass that my husband and I grow on our apartment terrace.
Wow. Okay, so
I went to some effort for this.
I could totally tell. So, how do you prepare the lemongrass? Is it freshly picked? Do you dry it? Do you just boil it? How do you make this?
Oh, it's not fresh. It's actually dried leaves from quite a while ago that we just kept in a jar. And actually, the plant has been growing a lot more since then, but this was a good excuse to actually be using some of that lemongrass that we preserved, and then it's just boiling it in some hot water and steeping it for a little while. Very simple, and got to let it cool first as well, since it's so hot over here now in the summer.
Fair enough. And if you have any leftovers, you can always put in the fridge for some refreshing beverage during the day. That's awesome. On my side, I am finishing up my coffee from the morning, and then I also have a glass of water. So, Clarissa, why don't we start by having you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
So, I'm in Hong Kong, and I've been a Women in Climate City Lead for about 2 years now. And my day job, I work in marketing, and I also do some work as an independent curator. And I'm starting to experiment in art making myself as well. And actually that aspect of what I'm pursuing creatively is all quite linked to climate, or it kind of starts from plants as a starting point. And the reason why I did the lemongrass tea thing was also I was thinking about this podcast and thinking about what kind of beverage would be meaningful to bring in. Here is that growing plants has been quite an inspiring activity for me in the past few years. And yes, it started during COVID. So not very unusual, but has led to a lot of different kinds of thinking deeper about my relation to the world, to the natural world, or to the rest of nature, even because humans are also a part of nature. Too often we think of ourselves as not natural. So briefly, yeah, these are kind of some important aspects of what I do. And then, of course, also the volunteering around women in climate, organizing events to gather people around together, which has been really fun.
Yeah, and Clarissa is also part of our City Lead Steering Committee. So we're really happy to have her there. And Clarissa and I actually met in the summer of 2023. So, like just over 2 years ago, I was in Hong Kong for a week or so and had hosted a Women in Climate event in Hong Kong. I had no idea what the reception would be like there. It was our first time heading to Asia. As part of that same trip, I also went to Taiwan and Singapore and hosted events there, but we had a really amazing turnout. I feel like we had maybe 25 women for a vegan dinner, and I guess that's kind of all where it started. Do you have any memories of that evening,
Yeah,
Clarissa?
for sure. Like I stumbled upon the dinner listing on an Eventbrite and I was like, oh, that's so great. I would love to be part of it. Like my job is not in climate, but it's been something that I've been thinking a lot about. So I was like, yeah, I want to join, want to be there. And it's been really great. I that's a really key part of the community that I love, how open it is and how much that emphasis is that it's not for women who already are working in climate only, but it is so much open to anyone who wants to be part of it, wants to talk about climate, wants to engage in it or learn about it. And because, well, the climate uh, issue really needs as many people as possible.
Yeah. And I guess afterwards, Clarissa, you were inspired to be a city lead and have since hosted a slew of events in Hong Kong. Our Hong Kong chapter is very active. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But a few things to unpack, I guess, as you were doing your intro. You're an independent curator. You know, you also grow plants. But kind of starting at a high level, in Hong Kong, you know, the city that you live in, what does sustainability and climate action look like? You know, what initiatives does Hong Kong have?
There's a lot of aspects. On one hand, I think Hong Kong does have a reputation for being like very urban, which it is, very, very densely packed, perhaps even having a reputation of people not caring that much. But there, but only one view, of course, and there are so many people who are really passionate about trying to make a difference, trying to push through change. On a higher level, in recent years, we are seeing much more of a system around recycling, different kinds of recycling, and more recently, food waste as well, although this isn't that widely rolled out yet. But there are initiatives that are in the works. There are large scale infrastructure related to what do we do with trees that have been felled for building or construction, like making space for construction, which inevitably is happening, continues to happen. What happens to that wood? So there are projects around treating it, breaking it down, and then converting it into compost that hopefully can bring it back into circular use. So there are a lot of different initiatives. There's also government funding related to training on sustainable finance or investment. So a lot of different aspects of initiatives from different spaces.
I remember when I went to Hong Kong around 2 years ago, there were different like pieces of infrastructure to collect plastic, even clothing. So there are very visible sustainability initiatives. I feel like Hong Kong is just one of those cities where people are so busy, you know, everyone's on the go. So convenience is really important. And so it's really interesting because how you motivate and incentivize people to be more sustainable might be different than a different city where things are a little bit more calm and there's more space.
Yeah, space is very relevant. Like, I think that definitely has a huge factor on to what extent people are able to like keep things and handle it for reselling or giving it up to somebody else. Because if you limited space, then a lot of the time people are like, oh, I have to get rid of this immediately, whether on the personal space or in terms of maybe in Europe, you often have all, like charity shops or large spaces where you have flea markets and you have that collection of secondhand items where you can browse, you can shop around for it. In Hong Kong, it's quite limited by space, but then there are platforms that do it digitally, of course. So there is that happening as well. We see those buy nothing groups as well popping up. So there are definitely ways to behave more sustainably, but it does take a bit more effort. So I think on one hand, many people, perhaps a majority of people in Hong Kong, are just very used to a high level of convenience, and many people it can be quite hard to step out of that convenience. But I think more and more there is that shift. And speaking of secondhand items, I think we are seeing that becoming even like a more fashionable thing as well when it comes to clothing. I think not yet to the extent of maybe Europe or the States where thrift shopping is such a big thing, but there is more on that front. Around brands like Redress, Hula, which are doing really good work around popularizing secondhand fashion.
Yeah, actually, the founder of Hula came to our original dinner, and I got a chance to visit two of the shops, one in Central and then one in near Quarry Bay in Hong Kong. And there was such a large assortment of secondhand luxury items, from scarves to bags to dresses. So it's nice to see that, there is interest in that and that you can build a business out of that in Hong Kong.
Yeah, absolutely. There are opportunities. People just need to look for it and start things like Sarah did with Hula.
In terms of climate communities, I've lived in a couple of big cities, whether it's San Francisco, London, New York. When I was living in London, there's definitely lots of nonprofits around, and that was about 4 years ago. So I don't actually know about the communities themselves because I wasn't super active at that time, and it was also COVID. But looking to New York, for example, every week there's maybe like over 10 events for sure, maybe even 20 each week in New York related to climate. And I'm curious in Hong Kong, like, what do the communities look like? Are there events often? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, there are a lot. Or there are communities like Green Drinks, similar kind of groups. And there are a lot of events as well. I think there's a big range. There will be some where it's more people who already know each other, perhaps we're already in the industry. And then there are some that are more like Women in Climate that are open to people who just are starting out or just curious. So a really big range, also very intimate communities, such as one that my friend Leanne is creating around her own space, where she's doing natural building techniques to build her home and also a studio and workshop space using locally found materials such as buffalo dung, paper pulp, and even lime, which although I think the lime she's using is unfortunately not exactly locally sourced because Hong Kong doesn't now no longer has that. But Hong Kong's history had a lot to do with lime and oyster shells, but through the years that has phased out, partly because a lot of the lime was already used up for Hong Kong's earlier stages of construction. Oh, sorry, digressing a little bit. So communities like Leanne's are very intimate, very intentional. And I think also what I love about it is it has a very spiritual aspect of it related to caring for oneself, people around you, as well as the environment and other beings.
Yeah, my feeling in Hong Kong is that there are a lot of kind of smaller, localized grassroots communities as well. And a shout out to Devana Ng, who also attended our dinner. She is the co-founder of Invisible Company, reducing plastic waste. And her partner Fab, they organize a cleanup. So they do a hike and a cleanup, and I actually had a chance to participate. Oh my God. In Hong Kong, a hike is like scaling a mountain. I remember we went to Yuen Long for this hike, and we were climbing up steep hills. Like this would never be a hike that I would ever do in California or in North America. Like the elevation was crazy. Like you look back and it's a little scary. Next level hike, but we also, as part of this, we were picking up trash along the way. So these are very sort of localized communities. Like Yuen Long is quite far for most people. So, I imagine that, if you live close, you have more incentive to go. And if you know Devana, then you know about this hike. But I feel like there's a lot of really great localized action communities in Hong Kong from what I saw.
Yuen Long is quite an interesting area to talk about because there are also small farms there. Hong Kong, now it's very hard to farm in Hong Kong because of the limited space. And also a lot of parts of Hong Kong are quite hilly. So the people who are continuing to farm in Hong Kong, that is quite an active resistance of continuing, especially those who are doing it organically, are using regenerative agricultural techniques. So our latest or our recent event that we did here in Hong Kong was with Hazel Fogg, who runs Birth Farm in Hong Kong, in Yuen Long, and she was in conversation with a farm in Malaysia, and they were visiting us here in Hong Kong, Project Mars, and sharing their techniques or related to agriculture, but not with the main objective of production, but really about engaging people in what it is to grow food and to be in a relationship with the land rather than, just buying stuff packed in plastic from a shelf.
Yeah, what a fun kind of city lead event that would be or was. So very interesting to hear about that. So Clarissa, if you could sort of wave a magic wand or, if from what you know about Hong Kong, what are some of the things that Hong Kong can do to really move the needle and take it up a notch when it comes to sustainability and climate action?
I think the biggest action we can take is really in terms of our consumption behavior, because so much of it we do thoughtlessly without really thinking about it, or even within just in dining, just eating. People in Hong Kong eat a lot of meat. And I think it's probably related to we work really hard. So people love food. It's really important to us. It's a key part of enjoying life and rewarding ourselves from after working really hard. And the association with eating well still to a large extent is with like Wagyu beef, for example. Like it's very a lot of emphasis on meat. So I think that a shift in that mentality would actually make a really big difference to how the impact that we make in Hong Kong.
I think actually that's a really interesting lens to sustainability is the other benefits. So health is a big one, right? Like eating more plant-based, eating more clean, it's actually better for your health, and people may take that in a different way rather than being like, animal protein is bad for the planet, so don't do it. But if it's good for your health, it's more directly relatable to you and actionable in a way as well. And recently in Toronto, I was at a Chinese cafe, right? A Ta Tan Tang, which is kind of like a fast casual restaurant. And normally my family and we bring our Tupperware and containers for taking any leftovers. Is just a habit that we have. Even before, like maybe 15 years ago, my dad had already started doing that. I don't really know exactly why, but we would always bring our own containers anyways. And we're definitely not in the majority. But this particular day, sitting beside me at the table, this lady took out a container. And I was so surprised. And I struck up a conversation with her. I was like, oh, like, that's really great. You brought your own container. And she's like, yeah, they're starting to charge now if you don't. So that's a really interesting way also to incentivize behavior is when there is like a quote unquote tax to using plastic or single use items. And I think that there's mixed feelings about this because obviously, a lot of people, they, just run out for lunch. They don't have time. They get delivery. And then if you add additional money to that can, seem unreasonable to them. But even if it's like 1 cent, that could actually incentivize people's behavior because, 1 cent is 1 cent and added over time, it does impact, even though it's a very low amount. So I'm curious if that will ever be a solution, but I did see firsthand that it motivated people.
Yeah, I think there's to some extent in tactics like that do work. In Hong Kong, that's been in place for some time, like 1 Hong Kong dollar for a plastic bag or takeaway box. But I think also perhaps now over here, it's been in place for some time. So a lot of people are also just, okay, take it as like part of the bill and not necessarily really thinking about it either. I think it again also links back to, of course, it's different for different kinds of people, but in terms of for a large subset of people who are like, I want to eat well, I want to experience good things, I'm not going to skimp on that $1 for to get this food to go. If it's something that they want to eat and they need to be on the go. So yeah, of course, there it helps to some extent. There are also limitations. But speaking on takeaway boxes, Swire Properties, which is also the group where I work, they in one of the office complexes, or there are multiple office buildings and there are also restaurants in that whole complex. They have actually a system where you can borrow takeaway box that is reused and then you can drop it off again. And it's accepted by the restaurant, the food vendors in the space. And even for temporary like Christmas fairs that they've done in the past where it's maybe just a few days and you have the food vendors are popping up for a short period of time, and even the visitors are just coming by. They're not office tenants who are always there, but they're just maybe neighbors. There is some initial pushback, but it's also I think, been done for at least 2 years in a row, or maybe more now. So I think initiatives like these do really help to just make this a more normal thing that people should be able to get behind, and should be able to do.
Yeah, that's huge. Like in Asia in general, like not only just in Hong Kong, the eating out culture is prevalent, right? People don't have time and it's very cost effective to eat out. And so, during lunchtime, you'll just see like hordes of people, at the vendors. And now that they have the option to use a reusable container and bring it back, that's really huge and sets a precedent for other buildings and food vendors to do the same as well. So I think that's a really great initiative by Swire. So, Clarissa, switching gears a little bit, you have been a city lead with Women in Climate for about 2 years now. Like, how has the journey been? How has the community evolved? Tell us a little bit more.
Well, firstly, when you mentioned earlier that in Hong Kong here, we've been really great, right, with having like regular events happening. I have to say it's really not down to just me. We have a few city leads, and of course, the great thing about the city lead network or program is also that there's that flexibility of jumping in and out based on each of our own availabilities, what we've got on. So I think it's been really great in Hong Kong with the other city leads that we have had. Yeah, we've had quite fairly regular events since starting about 2 years ago. There are some gaps in between, but it's pretty good. And how the community has evolved, I think we are getting more, we have more community members who find out about us referred by friends or referred by the perhaps people or organizations that we've invited to speak at some of our events. So there is more and more people who are interested in joining, and I think getting more vocal in our group as well. And I love to see people just asking questions in the informal WhatsApp group that we have, and others just naturally respond really quickly, and it really doesn't need us city leads to be like facilitating everything. It's great to see that organic conversation, and people just want to connect and share information and help each other out.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also evolved from the types of events that you were doing before. Like my event was a dinner, and I know that the group there has organized like a couple of those, but you've been doing some really interesting events lately. Can you tell us about a few of those?
One of the ones we did this year was tree planting, where we went to Arc Eden, which is a fantastic organization in Hong Kong, where they have, for many years, they've been working also with the government to on reforestation works on the hillsides of Mui Wo, and we got to support them on one of these to plant trees and also learn more about the local tree species. And the ones that we planted that day were actually particularly good for countering landslides. And I think one aspect also just simply knowing more or being able to identify local tree species is also really significant, because Hong Kong in the past also a lot of the trees that are planted in parks and so on, or even in reforestation efforts, are not necessarily native. So getting that exposure with Archeden and learning about these native trees and how they contribute to the whole environment of those hillsides was really fantastic.
Nice. Not only networking, but doing an activity together and learning together. I think that builds a different type of bond. And I particularly was really struck by the ocean event that you had organized, the group had organized in June. And shout out to MC Marie Celine, who is one of our global members. She's kind of been all over the place. I think she was in Indonesia at one place, and now she's in Hong Kong. And I see her very active in the WhatsApp group as well. But she also attended the ocean event. And it particularly struck out to me because you all hosted an event at an open space, it seemed like, in, a neighborhood in Hong Kong. There was no roof. You had these kind of chairs that were folding chairs that you brought out, and you had some talks and panels, and it was super grassroots and just felt like a really wonderful vibe. Can you like describe to our listeners more about that event?
Yeah, actually, that was totally thanks to Marie Celine MC to curate that panel of speakers and to really basically push us to get this event done. So that was fantastic. The timing was just before World Ocean Day. We had speakers from the Nature Conservancy, Maureen Thomas, and also Carly, who had just taught herself how to do illustration, and she published a book, a children's book, celebrating the ocean. And also Rainbow Leung, who is founder of a Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Hong Kong, who is actually representing a younger segment. Like she's still work in university. So it was a really great range of perspectives. And the open space that you mentioned, Michelle, that was part of the Blue House area in Hong Kong, where it's a heritage building that has been regenerated with very much this view of involving communities, welcoming communities. And that open space, it was a little bit risky, but I'm glad the weather held up. And we had vegan food from this lovely neighborhood restaurant just there, Kanwanaka. And they were so great. They organized the outdoor furniture. They borrowed extra furniture for us because we're a bigger group than what they're used to. So they were really just lovely.
Wow. I didn't even know these behind the scenes notes. That's so cool. And I would love for us to drop the LinkedIn recap of the tree planting and the ocean events so our listeners can get a visual of what we're describing, because you kind of have to see the photos to really get the vibe. So we'll make sure to add those to the show notes. If you're open to indulging us, Clarissa, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your garden project. In Hong Kong, there is not a lot of space. So tell us a little bit more about how you had this idea and how you actually do this.
We're really lucky in that our apartment, well, also when we were looking for apartments, we were looking specifically for somewhere that had an outdoor space where we could grow plants. And our apartment now, it opens up onto a fairly large terrace. So ideally we would love to be able to plant in soil, like in the ground. We're now on the 28th floor, trying to connect with the land, so we're planting in these planters and pots. It does limit how well the plants can grow or how big they can grow, but it's still it's a huge learning process, and amazing to see the life that just starts and grows from there. And it's not just the plants themselves, but of course then there are different insects that find their way here. Some months ago, my husband discovered 30 something kind of balls of soil, and they're actually baby beetles, basically, or beetle larvae. And so it's amazing, and you wonder, like, how did they get here? We are by no means experts at all. Yeah, there's so many aspects of it, of watching plants to see what happens to them and discovering the flower, how the flowers of eggplants look like, and so on.
Or the fact that an eggplant actually it gets its name because it looks like an egg when it's young. It's white and it kind of like is an egg shaped and then it grows long and then it becomes purple. But it's yeah, it's fascinating to see. What do you grow in your garden? You have lemongrass. What else?
Right now, we also have shiso, which we actually just ate a bit of for dinner before having this chat with you. We sprinkled it in with like fish sauce and noodles. We also have chili, which we also used. We have some baby passion fruit seedlings. What else do we have? We have some pumpkin plants, but we realize this is the first time that we've tried pumpkin. We don't really have enough sunlight for them to grow properly. So we've just seen them flower, but no fruit. But yeah, learning process. What else
Wait,
do
and
we have?
Clarissa, what is shiso?
Shiso, it's like that Japanese, it's a herb, and it comes in, the one we have now is purple. So if you go to sushi restaurants, you will often find a shiso leaf with radish on
Ah,
top of it.
yes, the green leaf.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Man, that's like, I feel like what you're growing there is so different from what someone would grow in North America. It would be like a
probably.
dream to like have a passion fruit, plant. But yeah, that's so amazing. Thank you for sharing with us, Clarissa. I want to switch gears right now to our real talk segment of YTT. In all of our careers and professions, we have our ups and downs. Do you have a win, a challenge, a story, etc., that has recently or is currently playing out in your personal or professional life that you would put in this space and share with our listeners?
I think is how I balancing paid work or my day job with the other things that I'm passionate about. Like um, we talked about the art creating and art making, as well as organizing events with women in climate. So currently, I'm really lucky to have an arrangement where the day job is 4 days a week, so I get more energy and bandwidth to devote to these other passions. It's really significant. I think for myself, I'm also working on adjusting my mentality to how I use that day because we often have this idea of productivity where we feel like we should be spending all day at a desk or just, working at least 9 to 5. Probably we should be working more than that. But that maybe is not necessarily the best way we should work or even suitable to do well and enjoy what we do, as well as have to be able to come up with new ideas for how to do what we're doing if we're just doing that nonstop for such a large section of the day.
So, how do you typically spend that extra day that you have?
It really depends. So sometimes it might not even be one full day. Sometimes I might end up taking a half day here and a half day somewhere else. So I would say it can vary a lot. So I'm working on just feeling into what it is that I need that week or that day. But some of the things that I've been doing is, well, currently I'm experimenting with making ink or a color, an art material basically out of plants, from plants. Or I say out of plants, but I want to think of that as a collaboration with the plants, where the color that I draw out of the plants becomes an expression of their own agency. Because I really am interested in this idea of plants, just like other living beings, as having their own life and therefore agency. They're not just objects or resources. So what might we learn from them? So this thinking, I was really influenced by Breeding Sweetgrass, such an amazing book. So that's been something that I'm playing around with, experimenting, learning from, with the benefit of that extra time to play with. Or I don't have to have a something very specific to show out of it from a specific amount of time. So I feel I have a lot more space to just make mistakes with it, do something silly. Not everything needs to look great, and see how things flow from that.
That's really amazing. And back to your original point of our definition of productivity, right? Like needing to sit at a desk and, be at our computers versus sometimes even just letting yourself have a mental break can lead to more productivity in the future. And you also have a creative outlet to use that time and to use a different part of your brain. Where can people learn or see more about the ink work that you're doing? Is there a place that they can go?
I haven't been really posting about it yet because for now I've still been keeping it quite close to my chest. But I would say there is a little bit of it on my Instagram account called Gardening for Survival. And on that account is where I've also been using for earlier curation projects where like last year, a bigger one was called Festival of Decay. So again, that also was thinking about plants life cycle and what we as humans can learn from that. Usually we are so scared of the idea of decay, like, oh, that's the worst thing that could happen if something breaks or ages or falls apart, but it's a normal part of life. And how can we face that in another way, perhaps that's more holistic and more healthy?
Yeah, I mean, probably need to unpack that in a separate episode, the concept of decay, but we'll be sure to include the account that you mentioned in the show notes as well. Clarissa, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being our city lead in Hong Kong. We really appreciate your efforts and the team in Hong Kong that is bringing climate action to women professionals. And for everyone else, stay tuned for our next episode in season 1 of YTT. Thank you, Clarissa.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks for joining us today. Head over to www.womenandclimate.co to learn more about how to join and support our free community. And be sure to subscribe to Yellow Table Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Stay tuned for the next episode.